Last year, I was gifted a Holy Grail camera, and in this video, I want to be sharing with you my first ever roll of film that I took with it in the Peak District, and how I nearly got trampled by some cows just to get a photo. But first off, you're probably thinking, how on earth did you get the Fujifilm TX1, a grail of a camera, also known as the Xpan, which is its twin, when all you've ever had is a Canon AE1 program before this, which is like a starter level film camera for many. Like, who do you think you are? And I agree. You see, this was a wedding present from my wife. I got married last August, and she secretly did some research from my family to find out that this was actually one of my grails, and she surprised me with it on the wedding day. Here we are, I've got it, I'm very grateful, so let's get to work. So we took a trip to the Peak District in the UK, which is a beautiful place with loads of countryside, amazing landscapes, and I thought it'd be the perfect place to finally try this bad boy out. And I had watched loads of videos on this camera before I even had it, but you know, cameras are very different when you actually own them in hand, so I did make a few mistakes in the beginning. So first off, loading up the film.
First roll in the Fujifilm TX1.
It's automatic so long as you put the film canister in correctly and pull the film tip out to the correct position, close the back door, and it should start counting up the number of exposures that you have to take. But here's the thing, this camera can switch between normal 35mm shooting and panoramic mode. And so if you're in panoramic mode, it takes up more space on the film per exposure, taking you from, let's say for example, 36 exposures on a typical roll down to about 20 exposures. And you can change the setting from 35mm to panoramic and back within the roll, and there's a little counter on a digital screen on top of the camera which will adjust as you change that. So now let me break down the first shot, which I was eyeing up between these two trees. By the way, some of these POV shots that you're seeing are from the Meta Ray-Ban sunglasses, which were since confiscated in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago. It's a whole nother story, I don't want to get into it. Still a little bit sour, but we move. Normally with a 35mm frame, I would not have been able to include these trees on either end. With the 45mm focal length, you're essentially standing that close to the trees, you're going to be getting essentially what's in between those trees. But I thought this would be a perfect example of showcasing what it's like to actually include essentially what's on either side of your regular frame. And the cool thing is that this camera within its viewfinder has these frame lines which change from 35mm to panoramic mode, so you can actually frame your shot and change it within the roll. Then we headed up to the first location, which is called the Roaches, which are these amazing jagged rock formations on top of these hills, and we go up this little peak, and I just saw the perfect frame just line up for me. And just look how interesting this landscape looks. Like, you've got the rocks on either side which are adding some depth of field. You've got these really well-defined cloud shadows which are adding some really nice dynamics to the scene. And I don't think this picture could have been replicated by a 35mm frame, or at least it wouldn't capture that same sort of dynamic landscape that this panoramic picture has. Then in between those peaks, you've got these little valleys with sheep roaming around, and I saw this little poser just sort of walk up, and I thought, let me align it with the peak. And also in the background, if you look in the top right corner, the sun is being carefully blocked by the clouds, which means that that part of the picture isn't super overexposed. You can actually see the sun shining through the clouds. You've got all the details in the highlights. The other interesting thing about this camera is that once you load up your film, the camera will unwind all of the film out of the canister, meaning that every time you take a picture, it will take that portion of the film and load it back up into the canister, essentially protecting the pictures that you've already taken in case you accidentally open up the back door. Now, if that happens, of course, you've lost the rest of the film, but it's quite intuitive that you're actually saving the pictures that you've already taken. And then I turned around 180 degrees to the other side, and then you've got this other peak, really jagged rock formation now, and the clouds start kind of changing color and hovering over the scene, making it look really ominous. Also, you probably don't get an idea of the scale until I zoom in to show you how small the people are in this scene. And here we've got more sheep. Of course, this one is another excellent paid actor. And we've also got quite a bit of negative space in this panoramic picture, which really adds to the context of the scene. Now, later that day, it starts raining quite heavily, and brave old me decides to keep shooting with this electronic camera out in the cold. So what I was trying to do here was, I was trying to get a close-up of this cow, sort of like a little portrait. Now, normally with a 45mm lens, if you're standing that close to a person or a thing, you're not going to get much detail. It's going to be a very tight shot. But I thought with the panoramic feature, I might be able to get a nice portrait plus some sort of depth of field and context with some background. And I think the picture came out quite nice. It wasn't focused completely accurately, but it was still quite clear.
Now, I couldn't make this video without today's sponsor, Sunsama. That's because I use them every day to manage my time and stay productive. I've always hated the idea of constantly changing apps and having to relearn new ones, and Sunsama just has everything I've needed. It integrates with Google Calendar, so I can add new tasks, slot them in the calendar, push non-urgent tasks to a backlog, go into focus or Pomodoro sessions, and much more. And it's just a beautifully designed app to use. So get productive with Sunsama. Start your extended free trial today with my link without even giving any payment details. Now back to the video.
And also the film roll that I'm using right here is called Silbersalz 500T, which is like my go-to film stock for the cinematic look. It's basically Kodak Vision 500T, which is what they used to use in motion picture film, but Silbersalz have basically repurposed it as 35mm film, and also if you send it to the lab, they will scan it for you in 14K. I mean, it costs a little bit extra, but I think they had a promotion at this time, so these scans are 14K, which is always a bit nice, you know, to have the extra resolution to play around with. This next one, the colors didn't really come out the way I was hoping it would. I don't know if it's because of the way I shot it or the way I've edited it, or if it's just the fact that it was really overcast. But even during the day, I've never really had a problem with a camera like my Canon 81 program, because the aperture goes, you know, as wide as 1.8. But with the TX1 or the Xpan with a 45mm lens at least, the widest aperture is 4, which isn't that great. And so it was actually proving quite difficult to expose properly, handheld, using this lens during daytime. And that is a bit disappointing, but I guess it's a bit of a trade-off for a lens which is complex enough to give those crisp panoramic images. This next picture was on the way to a place called Lud's Church, which is like something out of a movie. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Hagrid just jumped out of there, but I definitely recommend, if you're ever in the area, to go and visit this place. It was just about approaching sunset, so we had to be quick because the sunlight was literally going down. I was having a lot of difficulty even taking pictures at this point. This is the only picture I took within that whole area from this camera in low light. It was handheld. I had to slow down the shutter speed, so it is a little bit blurry if you can see, but I still think it came out pretty nice. Then we head out of there, we're on the way back to the car, and I see this really nice looking cow, photogenic cow, and I'm starting to get close to it, trying to get those portraits like I was trying to do earlier. Don't get me wrong, I was a bit shook, but I was like, you know, it's eating grass, what's it gonna do? And it was kind of like staring at me, but anyways, I get close to it, and then because of the low shutter speed again, because it's kind of, you know, getting very overcast, and the angle, the picture came out like this, and I was like, what the hell? Have I made this cow look like some kind of creature? The cow looks proper goofy, but it's kind of funny. Yeah, not really happy with these pictures, but it gave me a good laugh. A couple minutes further, we saw this horse which was just eating by its stable, and the sun was really setting by this point, so I took this picture. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I'm kind of glad you can still make out the sunset. It's definitely underexposed, but hey, still an okay picture. The next day, we pulled up to this random, abandoned, hut-looking thing with a beautiful landscape in the back. It had a bunch of cows as well nearby, which we're going to come to. And this picture was one of my favorites from the entire roll. Just look at it. It looks like something out of True Detective Season 1. If you've not seen it, you need to watch that. So I'm thinking, yo, there's probably some creep in there right now. I ain't going nowhere near it. No, thank you. So I turned around, started taking pictures of some cows. And right before that, I saw this stone wall, which I took a picture of mainly because I wanted to play around with the rule of thirds. Normally with a 35mm, you know, frame, I'm kind of used to it now, but with the panorama, everything's like a bit distorted. So I took a picture of this kind of stone wall, neatly sort of along the 1/3 line. You got the roaches in the back, got some cows on the right side, a bit of depth of field there. So I think it's an okay picture. Then I had this great idea. I was like, why don't I go up to these cows, take a picture of them? You know, they're not gonna do anything. They just chill, they're just eating their grass. What are they gonna do? So I'm going up to them with confidence, you know, I'm like, you know, squatting down, getting my composition ready, doing it with confidence, thinking realistically, like, you know, if I act cool, they act cool. If I don't charge at them, they're not going to do anything. And then, oh shit, they start squaring up to me. They literally start like jogging up to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, are these cows or bulls? Because I'm now looking at their horns, and I'm like, wait a minute, these previous cows didn't have horns. Maybe they did. But I was like, now they're walking towards me. This one cow right at the front is dead squaring up to me, and I'm like, what you trying to do? And if they are cows, they've still got horns. They still weigh tons. They can all like rush me and just like trample all over me, and then I'll be dead. death by cow. That's not a good look. So I didn't want to become a meme, so I just started running. I'm like, let me get out there. My wife, on the other hand, turns into Lisan Al-Gaib, just stands her ground and puts her hand up, and suddenly all the cows stop. She got me feeling all emasculated and stuff, so I had to chat to her later, you know, tell her that I can't run again. Anyway, it's pretty impressive, nonetheless. But then I had a bright idea. I ran back behind that stone wall, and obviously there was a gap in the stone wall. They could have probably come around it, but they don't know any better, the cows. So I'm behind the stone wall now, and they're coming up all the way close to me. Now I got some nice portraits. Check these out. Yeah, not so tough now, are you? Behind the wall. Finally, the last picture, we go up to this nice viewpoint. Loads of people are up there, but we thought, you know what, just to finish off this row, let's get a couple of pictures just to encapsulate the horizon and all its glory. Sum up this beautiful trip in Peak District with this final shot. Here I am in the center. I really like this picture, and yeah, that's the end of the roll. Now I want you to let me know in the comments how you think I did. Do you like the panoramic pictures that are coming out of this camera? Do you think it's just all hype, or is it worth the value? And do you want to see anything else specific from this camera? I mean, I've already got videos coming out from Paris and Cairo having used this bad boy, but if you want to have a quick glimpse of that, I've made a short film about the beauty of this camera already. So check that video out if you haven't already, and make sure you subscribe if you're lurking, because I don't like you lurkers. Yeah, just subscribe, stop messing around. I'll see you in the next one.